The movie opens up in the 19th century on a remote island in Chile. We're introduced to our protagonist, Rosa, a 13-year-old indigenous girl. Along with her father, she works and lives at the house of a man named Stefan, who is one of the German settlers in the area. Stefan lives with his wife and 2 sons, and he earns a good living from sheep farming. One morning, Rosa walks to Stefan's house to begin her duties, where she encounters 2 fierce and hostile dogs owned by her boss. She then begins preparing breakfast for Stefan's family, and once finished, she leaves the room when everyone arrives. While Stefan prays for the meal, Rosa also prays from the next room, even though she's indigenous. She has recently converted to Christianity. Moments later, Rosa peeks through the curtain and notices something happening on the farm, which compels her to go there. It turns out that Stefan's sheep are all lying unconscious on the ground with no apparent cause. Most of them are already dead, and some of them are breathing their last. She also discovers a bizarre braid of twigs wrapped around one of the dying sheep. Soon after, a scared Rosa and her father rush toward the field. Seeing the Indian knots, Stefan believes that Rosa's father did this on purpose as a form of protest against the German migrants. The father claims he is unaware of this, and then suddenly, Stefan gets aggressive and pushes Rosa's face against his sheep. Upon witnessing how badly his daughter is treated, Rosa's father is forced to intervene and tells Rosa to go home quickly. He then brings out his knife, but before he can use it, an enraged Stefan unleashes his 2 vicious dogs on him. Rosa begs for forgiveness, but Stefan remains unfazed and holds Rosa tightly to watch her father eventually be killed by the dogs in front of her eyes. Later, we see a devastated Rosa sobbing beside her father's lifeless body. Rosa cries all day, realizing she'll be living alone from now on. She has to live alone because her mother passed away a long time ago. The next day, she buries her father in the woods. She marks the spot with a cross she built from a pair of sticks. Just then, Stefan's wife arrives with her sons and informs Rosa that there is no need to put this cross because her father was not a Christian. However, Rosa claims that she is a devout Christian and walks away from there angrily, holding a grudge against Stefan's family. Later in the evening, Rosa decides to stay in the woods, staring at the bonfire, right when a raven approaches her, and the two end up staring at each other. The following day, she approaches the village mayor, who is also a settler. She demands that Stefan be punished, but he refuses to take any action since the Spaniard has no desire to cause a rift with the German community. Worse yet, he tells her that he can't resurrect her dead father and claims that her father was killed by 2 dogs and that he can't put dogs in jail. Hearing what he said enrages her, and with nowhere else to go, Rosa seeks shelter in a local church, hoping for support from a priest. The priest gives her food, and when he notices her anger, he asks her to look within herself. She asked the village mayor for justice, and she now asks God for justice, but she has not asked herself for it. He then offers to arrange a guardian for her, someone who can really help her. The next day, Rosa visits an indigenous elder named Mateo, who lives alone on the island. He is a grumpy man who was hesitant at first, but he eventually lets her in. He then gives her some food and a warm place to sleep. The following morning, they walk to a nearby beach, where Rosa helps him with his fishing. He praises her knife skills, saying she cuts the fish really well, seeming to be trying to hint at something, and Rosa replies that fish are no different from lambs. In the next scene, Rosa and Mateo sneak into the area where her father is buried. There, she prays to her God while Mateo grabs the tree and murmurs a strange kind of prayer. Rosa worries that the Germans might notice them, but Mateo assures her that she is invisible today. As they sit down, Rosa says that she believes that her father is in heaven, but Mateo claims that her father's afterlife belongs in the sea because he is an island native. The next morning, she is startled awake by the chirping of a flock of birds flying above their shack. Curious, she follows them and ends up arriving at a nearby forest. There, she notices Mateo and a group of other indigenous people meeting in secret. She follows them to a cave from behind, but strangely enough, she finds that the cave is actually a dead-end path, and all those people have vanished. She decides to wait for them to come back, and sometime later, a nude elderly woman comes from the place, wearing the same twig braids around her body, which were found on the dying sheep earlier. This woman notices Rosa staring at her, but she turns around and continues to walk. After a while, Rosa and Matteo return to the beach to catch some fish. Rosa asks him why the dead sheep had braided twigs. She thinks that the indigenous people have something to do with that and says that the dead sheep were the reason for her father's death. However, Matteo gets angry and claims that dead lambs cannot murder somebody, but living dogs can. He further says that her father died because German settlers don't care about indigenous people's lives, and that justice isn't for unimportant people like them. Hearing this, Rosa becomes so shattered that she goes near the water and decides to drown herself. But fortunately, Matteo intervenes just in time and saves her. That evening, she awakens in Matteo's home, and he gives her some dead birds. She doesn't understand this, so he explains that these birds will carry her sorrow and fly away with it. Rosa says that she wants to be with her father, but he explains that even if she drowns in the sea, she won't be able to reunite with him. So, he urges her to close her eyes and rest for a while. Afterward, Matteo prepares a meal for Rosa and asks her what she desires, so she explains that all she wants is justice for her father's death. When he asks what justice means to her, she says that she wants her father's killer, Stefan, to suffer. Hearing this, Matteo promises that he will talk to other indigenous people, and that since the dogs killed him, justice must also be served to the dogs. The following day, while Rosa is sitting on the beach, she is approached by a woman named Aurora. It turns out that she is the same naked woman from earlier, and Aurora brings her to her cottage, where Rosa realizes that she is a witch and is actively committed to sorcery. Aurora then begins narrating the island's history to Rosa. She says that a long time ago, a sorcerer named Moralita came to the island. He asked to be taken to the most powerful wizard on the land, but to his surprise, a strange indigenous woman showed up. The two then engaged in a fierce competition by morphing into large animals. But in the end, Moralita became the largest beast possible. It seemed like he was about to win when surprisingly, the woman moved her hands and caused his ships to rupture like the insides of a whale. This compelled Moralita to give away his book of magic to the woman, which resulted in the formation of their secret society, La Recta Provincia. Aurora also informs Rosa that the members of La Recta Provincia took all the spells necessary to defend themselves against outside forces from the sorcerer's book. When Rosa asks who is part of this society, Aurora reveals that they are those who seek justice for the Indians and for this island. It is here where they begin the ritual. The next morning, we return to Stefan's house and discover that Stefan's two sons have gone missing. To add, his wife finds their two dogs sitting on their sons' beds and chases them off. The German settlers soon set out in search of the two children, Franz and Torsten, but they are nowhere to be seen. After relentlessly looking all day, Stefan's wife concludes that the indigenous people are to blame for this situation. Turns out the indigenous people are known for transforming humans into other beings, like dogs and sheep. The next day, Matteo and a few other men suspected to be involved with La Recta Provincia are arrested. The police brutally torture them and demand to know where the two boys are. Soon after, a court hearing is held, and the mayor declares them to be a gang of criminals who have terrorized the land for many years. The mayor tries to force them into confessing the entire truth about Stefan's kids, but Matteo objects to this allegation and denies his people's involvement in the disappearance of the kids. When he fails, he is imprisoned until solid evidence is found. Afterward, Rosa arrives at the prison and visits Matteo. She asks if there's anything she can do to help him, but he gives her a shocking reply. He urges her to burn down his house and leave the island as soon as possible. When Rosa asks for the reason, he discloses that he is part of La Recta Provincia and tells her she is fortunate to be a Christian and not like other Indians. Since she is still very young, he asks her to move on and start a new life far away. After this, Rosa heads to Matteo's house, where she is shocked to find two of Stefan's dogs behind the house, as well as worms on the ground falling from the ceiling. She investigates the attic and discovers that the worms came from the dead birds there. She then takes one of the Indian knots she discovered and goes ahead and totally burns down the house. However, instead of running away from the island, she decides to stay and help her friends. The following morning, Rosa arrives at the shore and sees Matteo and the others being cruelly tortured by the German settlers in order for them to confess their acts. She tries to intervene, but an officer forcefully pushes her to the ground, while poor Matteo has cuts on his back, all mixed up with salty seawater. Rosa is devastated and furious at herself for not being able to help Matteo. Later, she follows Aurora through the forest and mentions that she wants to be a part of La Recta Provincia. Aurora agrees right away and takes her to the nearest waterfall. She says that Rosa will have to wash away the water she was baptized with. For this, Rosa walks across a waterfall while Aurora starts chanting, and then Rosa reaches a cave. There, she finds a burning flame and a papery human skin. Later, while it is raining, Rosa is staring at the mayor's pregnant wife from a distance. She sneaks up on her and follows her all the way to her house, where she knocks on the door. When asked what she needs, she requests shelter in the mayor's house until the rain calms down, and the woman reluctantly agrees. It is evident that the little girl has come here with a plan after the pregnant wife leaves her alone. In the next scene, Rosa and Aurora are about to commence the ritual with the human skin from earlier. But then, Stefan and his men suddenly arrive and arrest both of them. Stefan is shocked to see Rosa there and tells her that if she is involved in his son's disappearance, she will end up like her father. Afterward, the two are brought to court, and when the mayor questions them about the human skin, Aurora only gives vague responses. As a result, they are imprisoned alongside Matteo and other indigenous people. Matteo is unhappy when he sees Rosa and says that she should have fled the island when she had the chance. However, Rosa claims that she is a witch who has already visited the secret island's cave. Hearing this, Matteo gets even more upset and scolds Aurora for involving the girl in the affairs of La Recta Provincia. Elsewhere, the mayor's wife suddenly jolts awake from her sleep and discovers something horrific. Her pregnant tummy has somehow turned blue. Perhaps the little girl cursed her during their earlier meeting. Later, the mayor visits Matteo in prison. He anxiously explains that his wife is about to give birth and an infection is eating her alive. He then requests their help and promises to release all of them in exchange for it. Matteo firmly denies this offer and claims he cannot do anything, but Rosa steps up and says that she can help him. Matteo tries to persuade her against it, but she has already made up her mind. Upon arriving at the mayor's house with Matteo, we learn that Rosa placed the Indian knot at the mayor's house before. In order to end the spell, Matteo burns the knot, and as a result, Rosa is able to assist in the delivery of a healthy baby. The mayor is relieved that both mother and son are safe. He thanks the duo for their effort and promises to help them in getting released. The next morning, Stefan and his wife pay a visit to the newborn baby with a gift. With this gift, they indirectly threaten the mayor not to release the indigenous people. After receiving the threat, the court proceedings begin, and the mayor decides to change his stance. He claims that the skin discovered from the indigenous people belongs to one of Stefan's missing children. As a result, he decrees that the prisoners of La Recta Provincia will be subjected to the firing squad as a punishment. This infuriates the indigenous people in the courtroom and chaos ensues, as they scream and call him a traitor. That evening, in the prison, Matteo requests Rosa's help in preparing something for the pain he will soon face. He tells her to take some herbs from his saddlebag, telling her to chew those herbs and feed them to him with water. He then says that since she's good with knives, she must cut his skin. Hearing this, Rosa begins to cry, and Matteo also tearfully promises to always protect her. As morning arrives, La Recta Provincia begins one of their rituals again inside the prison. Matteo is on the floor, and Rosa tears open his flesh with a knife while the others start chanting. Later, we see Rosa lying on the floor with Matteo's skin on her torso, and this ritual will allow her to enter the body of a powerful dog. In the next scene, we see a vicious dog, aka Rosa, break into the mayor's house and start barking aggressively at his wife and child. When the mayor arrives, he somehow understands that this animal has been cursed. Fearing for his family's safety, he follows the dog to the prison and then frees all of the indigenous prisoners, including Rosa. After her release, Rosa returns to visit her father's grave. She murmurs her prayers into the tree, just like Matteo did when they visited the grave together. She then removes the cross from the grave because she is no longer a Christian and lies on it to show her father that she has completed her father's vengeance. Following this, she talks with the two dogs and places some dead birds by their side, saying that these birds will carry away their sorrow. She addresses them by the names of Stefan's sons, Franz and Torsten. It turns out she really did magically transform them into dogs. In the final scene, Rosa takes part in the indigenous people's court of La Recta Provincia. The girl takes Mateo's place as the ritual leader this time. She sings their song and swears allegiance to their cause. Thus, we reach the end of this film. Thanks for watching. You can like this video to support us. Don't forget to subscribe for more content. See you in the next video. Goodbye.